Did your chalice tremble, Alcinous? It is not the shaking of your hands. It is the very breath of Hades, exhaling through my words, snuffing out the fires in your hall. Listen, then, to how the last human hope vanishes. Part 1. Black Blood and Ghosts of the Past. We put ashore where the black waters of the ocean lick the rotting sands of Cimmeria. Darkness. A solid, oily darkness you could scrape from the hull with your fingernails. I drew my sword, dug a pit, cubit by cubit. A square where my last pride was meant to drown. I poured libations into it, honey, milk, sweet wine, pure water. I sprinkled it all with white barley. But it wasn't food they wanted. They craved what they had been stripped of. The warm, salty river of life. I brought forward the black beasts Circe had given. One stroke of the blade. A hot, thick stream of black blood struck the trench. And the darkness came alive. They swarmed from the subterranean fissures, brides with torn throats, warriors in rusted, blood-spattered bronze, old men with empty sockets. They raised their cry, a vile, thin piping like thousands of rats clawing against iron. My stomach turned with loathing. The hand gripping the sword grew slick with cold sweat. Fear. A raw animal terror choked my throat, yet I stood between them and the blood, naked bronze against the locusts of death. First to break through to the pit was Elpenor, our freshly dead. His neck was still crooked, and his breath reeked of the same unwatered wine that killed him on Circe's roof. He didn't drink the blood. Grief gave him the strength to rasp out of turn. Do not leave me, Odysseus. Do not abandon my bones to the dogs on this cursed island. Burn my armor. Plant my ore upon the mound. I swore it, my first debt in this realm of ash. I had left his body to rot under the walls because I was in a hurry, my cursed haste, my eternal price for the right to survive. Then she approached, Anticleia, my mother. Her eyes looked at me from beneath the mist, empty, blue, filmed over by death. And I lunged at her with my storm-dark bronze. I held my own mother at striking distance, like a stray dog. Because the blood did not belong to her, the blood belonged to the prophet. Is there a sin left that I haven't committed for my own salvation, Alcinous? Tiresias emerged from the depths, clutching a golden scepter, useless iron that in this place cannot buy even a gasp of air. He fell to the trench like a beast to a puddle. Glutted on strength, the prophet raised his head, and I saw his sockets, empty, clouded with a whitish film from which my own sheep's blood ran instead of tears. It matted his gray beard, bubbling and gurgling in his dry throat. He thrust out his sticky fingers, found my face, and smeared the warm filth across my cheeks, spitting my own pride back into my eyes. You blinded Posthumous, son of the Earthshaker. It wasn't enough to save your skin. Your cursed tongue demanded glory. You shouted your name to the Cyclops, so the whole world would know your triumph. Now Poseidon drinks your tears, and you wash yourself in blood. Tiresias warned me against the island of Thrinacia, the cattle of Helios, holy flesh that no knife must touch. If your men kill even one beast, you lose everything. The ship will burn, your men will die in agony, and you will return on foreign planks, alone, broken, and at home rats will be devouring your substance. And finally he spat out my inevitable end, an oar on my shoulder and a long road to where savages know nothing of the sea, eat no food seasoned with salt, and have never seen crimson-cheeked ships. They will mistake my oar for a winnowing fan, there, in the dry earth where not even the scent of the surf remains. I must plant that wood and pray to Poseidon for mercy. Only then will death come for me, slow, tedious from the sea, in the twilight of my years, when old age has drained my strength. if that can even be called living. Part 2. The Poison of Doubt and the Eternal Millstones. I sheathed my sword, allowed my mother to press her lips to the black broth. She opened her eyes and knew me. Her words cut deeper than Trojan arrows. She died of longing for me, for my clever mind, which couldn't save his own mother. She told me of home, my father Laertes sleeping in the ashes by the hearth, dressed in rags, Telemachus fighting off the wolves, Penelope drowning in tears every single day. I lunged toward her, wanted to hold her, to grasp this beloved mist. 3 times my arms closed upon my own chest. Nothing. Emptiness. Only a cold draught. The law of Persephone is ruthless. Fire destroys flesh and bone, leaving only this ghostly mire drifting in the dark. Then the women approached, an endless, pale procession of queens, whose names once made cities tremble, now reduced to the stench of dried blood. They jostled at the trench, shoving one another aside with bruised, blue elbows. I saw Jocasta, her neck still elongated and blackened by the noose, a rasp escaping her lips about the son who became her husband. Beside her, Euryphile bared her teeth, clutching with phantom fingers the necklace for which she sold her husband's life. They drank the black broth and howled their miseries right into my face. Watching this procession of the betrayed and the betrayers, I felt my certainty crack like a dry pine trunk. If the greatest queens end up here like mad bitches, why do I trust the woman I left on Ithaca? What stops Penelope from being next in this line? Agamemnon. Once we crawled before him in the dust under Troy. Now he crawled to my trench, dragging behind him a train of his guards' shadows, likewise hacked to pieces, blue with trailing entrails. He gorged on the sheep's blood, and when he raised his head, a roar broke from his mouth along with black foam, like a beast led to slaughter. It wasn't Trojan iron that killed him. He was butchered by his own wife, Clytemnestra, alongside her lover, Aegisthus. They waited for him to wash away the road grime, drink his wine, and let his guard down. They slaughtered him right at the banquet table, amid the scraps of fatty meat, overturned amphorae and golden cups. He choked in a pool of his own blood mixed with spilled wine, and she didn't even bend down to close his eyes. She left him staring blankly at the ceiling of the palace where he was born. Never trust a woman, Odysseus. He spat this warm, borrowed sheep's blood at my feet, his phantom fingers clawing for my knees. Not even the one who swears fidelity at the altar. Land on your Ithaca like a thief, under cover of night, without banners, without shouting. Trust is a noose you tighten around your own neck while you sleep. He crawled back into the gloom, and the poison had already taken root in my mind. If even the great son of Atreus ended up like a pig in a trough, who guarantees that my Penelope isn't already sharpening a bronze knife for me? Then Achilles appeared, our radiant god of war, whose name alone made rivers turn back at Troy. Behind his shoulders, like 2 submissive hounds, walked Patroclus and Antilochus. Once the fairest men of the Achaean camp, now they were reduced to 2 pale blurs with blackened lips, who even in the realm of ash dutifully stared into their leader's mouth, doomed to remain forever his shadow and retinue. Out of habit, I tried to weave grand words for Achilles, saying we honored him like an immortal in life, and now he, the great son of Peleus, rules over these countless dead. But he cut me off with a rasp that smelled of a damp cellar and old grass, while black slime still oozed from his pierced heel. "Do not try to comfort me regarding death, clever Odysseus," he hissed. "Better to be the lowest serf on earth, breaking my back for a penniless, landless peasant for a crust of moldy bread, than to lord it over this rotted assembly of the dead who possess not even a name." Achilles wouldn't listen to my excuses. His empty sockets demanded news of his son, Neoptolemus, and I dumped the whole truth out before him, without embellishment or pity. I told him his boy became the first among killers at Troy, that he ruthlessly gutted enemies and slaughtered gray-haired King Priam with his own hands at the holy altar. I mentioned how we burned foreign cradles, and how his son watched it with the cold detachment of a man doing his job. I called him the true heir to Pelean fury. I thought this filth would make him flinch. But the great spirit who had just been cursing hell and weeping for earthly life suddenly drew himself up. His colossal shadow took proud, sweeping strides away across the asphodel meadow, and behind him, keeping strict distance, moved the two other shadows, Patroclus and Antilochus. Achilles walked away, consoled by the fact that his blood had not turned to water, that his name still makes the living shudder with horror. Shadows have no need for repentance. Where there is no future, greatness is measured only by the amount of ash left behind. Only Ajax, son of Telamon, would not approach the pit. He stood apart in deep resentment. His glare burned the bronze on my chest, the judgment for the armor of Achilles. My cursed tongue won that dispute, and because of it, Ajax threw himself upon his sword. I called out to him, begged him to tame his anger, to forget the old feud. He spoke not a single word, turned and vanished into the dark. His silence was heavier than any curse. Part 3. The Abyss and the Living Depths. I stepped deeper, down where the darkness grows heavy as lead, and time stops altogether. There, upon a ghostly throne, sat Minos. His golden scepter gleamed dimly as he handed down his absurd judgments upon those already stripped of everything. What is the sense in judging ash? Past him rushed the giant Orion, once a great hunter, now a fool, chasing across the asphodel field, the ghosts of the very beasts he had slaughtered in life. Emptiness, hunting emptiness. I wanted to laugh at this grotesque futility, but the laugh caught in my throat when I saw Tityos. The son of Gaia lay stretched across 9 acres of scorched earth. He couldn't even flinch while 2 vultures plunged their beaks deep beneath his ribs, tearing out chunks of his liver. The flesh grew back with a crunch beneath the eternal night of Hades, so these monsters would never be left without fresh, hot food. This hopelessness of the cycle paralyzed me. I stared at his torn belly and understood. The underworld doesn't just punish for sins, it breaks man's very attempt to be anything more than dust beneath the feet of the gods. Nearby, Tantalus endured his torment. He stood up to his chin in a pool, yet an unquenchable thirst racked him. Every time he bent his parched lips toward the water, it vanished with a hiss, exposing the black mud. Ripe pomegranates and figs hung above his head, but the moment he reached out his hand, the wind flung the branches into the clouds. Looking at him, I shuddered, for in his agony I recognized my own fate, my eternal, unreachable Ithaca, which vanishes every time I stretch my hand toward it. And further on, coated in foul sweat and dust, Sisyphus strained. With both hands, he shoved a massive boulder up a sheer precipice. Every muscle tensed to the limit, bones cracking under the weight of the stone, and when the summit was but a step away, an unseen, terrifying force snapped the stone downward, and it went thundering back to the plain. And he began anew, without the right to stop. In that stone I saw my own doom, my endless return home through blood and betrayal, where every triumph of mine turns into a new plunge into the abyss. Finally, the furious likeness of Heracles rose before me. Not the man himself, no. The son of Zeus himself, consumed by the fires of Uta, had long since escaped mortal fate and banquets on Olympus at the right hand of his father. But the gods took only his immortal essence to heaven, fed and indifferent to the earthly past. while everything that made him human, his fury, his bloody atrocities, his memory, and the animal fear of oblivion, they dumped down here at the bottom of the abyss. This phantom cast with a taut bow doesn't even know his higher self is currently among the gods. His Eidolon is doomed to stand forever in the posture of a killer amid the shrieking of ghost birds. Even the best of us leave our most terrible, most painful ash here in the realm of death, while the immortals claim only our hollowed-out glory. And then the abyss went mad. Thousands, tens of thousands of shadows of the dead swarmed to the pit with an unbelievable, wild, hungry cry. It was the roar of millions of empty stomachs. A metallic taste of panic filled my mouth. Breathlessness squeezed my chest. A raw, icy horror pierced me. What if Persephone has grown tired of my warm spirit? What if she is already sending the head of the hideous monster, the Gorgon Medusa, against me from the depths of Hades? One glance, and my ship, my men, and I myself will become stones upon this shore of the dead. I ran. Kings do not run like that. That is how rats run from a burning trap. I fell onto the deck, scraping my nails to the bone. "To the oars!" I screamed, and nothing of a ruler remained in my voice, only the gasp of a hunted beast. "Tear the water! Row if you want to see tomorrow's dawn!" We leapt onto the benches, grabbed the wood, tore the water until our blisters bled. The swift current of the ocean river caught our vessel and swept it out of the mist, back into the open, salty sea. I escaped Alcinous again. But look at my hands, they are not trembling, no. They are simply cold, like that rotting sand of Cimmeria. Why are you silent, Lord of the Phaeacians? You wanted to hear the story of my glory, wanted to entertain your guests with an epic song. Now you know its real price. Do you think the worst is behind me? That after the gates of Hades a mortal has nothing left to fear? I thought so too, King. But I was wrong. Even the underworld monsters are incapable of the refined cruelty that the living depths of the sea had prepared for me. Pour me more wine, Alcinous. Sit closer and listen further. If, of course, you are ready for what happened next.